All right, we're back with another episode of ManAlive. And we're back with, I am David, and my co-host, which is in the the state of Georgia,
Georgia.
is finished up his days. Good Lord, it makes it
Yes,
sound like rapture's about
my
to
days
occur,
were
don't it?
numbered.
Uh, he finished up his conference day at the conference, is what I was trying to say, and just here again, we just kind of want to talk to y'all about what the conferences are like and what to expect and kind of our thoughts on what goes on. So, uh, Mr. James, I'll open it up to you, bro.
Hey, thanks, David. And it's good to be back on Man Alive, best podcast in the world. Oh, so the morning started off with a few emails from G3. Um, as we talked about last night, there was actually a bomb threat at the end of day two, and there weren't a lot of information about it. Of course, a lot of people had already left. They were starting to do the movie for last night, and from what I understand, a bomb threat was called in, or someone threatened to bomb the place, and they evacuated people. As far as I know, the subject or the suspect they've been detained. I don't think there was any big drawed out like a running scene or anything like that. The email said that whoever was making the threats has been detained, and they were taking precautions, that sort of thing. Um, they made one slight adjustment to the schedule in that instead of having the sermon by John MacArthur, which was supposed to start at 8, they moved everything to just 9 o'clock, which was Ken Ham's time to deliver a sermon, and they did not do John MacArthur's sermon. His sermon was, of course, a recorded of one of his previous sermons on the sovereignty of God. But that's how the day started.
All right. So, um, one thing that I noticed, I wish they were more clear with the people who are there about what's going on. And what I mean by
Yeah.
that is, we've had people running late, that kind of thing, and they don't have to even make an announcement. They've got the app. At least when I was there, they were communicating through people through the app. And it wouldn't take nothing to have somebody be like, look, running late due to someone not arriving on time or whatever. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
like, I don't need to know why they're not arriving on time. I just need to know that uh, I don't have to be there at 8 if it isn't going to start until 9.
Right.
Right?
And I don't have the G3 app, but I'm with people that do. And unless they just missed it, I don't think they had any more information than people that were just checking out Facebook or
Yeah.
Twitter.
Yeah. So that's something that with that conference being that large and things happen. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not over here going, I can't believe they, millions of dollars and they can't get it right. It's like, no, things happen, but letting us know what's happening it would be helpful.
Yeah. So what they did, the change besides dropping John MacArthur's sermon, and that just kills me to say that sometimes we're going to drop John MacArthur's sermon, but it wasn't as bad sounding as that. He was not able to physically come. They were going
Mm-mm.
to do a sermon by him, um, via the screens. So if anybody wants to watch it, they can go on YouTube and watch it. So it's not like it was really missed. But they started at 9. They would not let people enter the room until very close to 9.
Mm-hmm.
I think around 8:45 they opened up the doors and they let people enter into the main conference center. You could walk around and go to the bookstore and that kind of thing, but not actually enter the main conference area.
Mm.
So yeah, we Ken Ham started it off. Ken
He had a
Ham,
pretty good thing. I did watch it.
great. Sorry,
I did watch the Ken Ham thing. It was good.
it was Ken Ham does a great job using media presentations. And he's quick too. He's not just putting up a slide and then pointing at it saying, like reading straight from it. No, the
Yeah.
slides really do supplement him because he could speak without them. He's a good speaker,
Hmm.
but the slides really supplement him rather than him just relying on the slides.
Well, and I
And that's
think
a
too
hard
with,
thing to do.
sorry, I know we accidentally with the long distance thing, we walk on each other sometimes. Um, but the man uses, I ain't saying that speech, but this is the way he operates. If not daily or week daily, multiple times a week. So he has that system, down pat. And and like you said, it is. You've seen people who have tried to rely on the screen and be like, okay, so this is what, versus someone who is speaking and the screen is keeping up with him. And so I think that was a good way to say it the way you did.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than having a PowerPoint presentation and reading verbatim from it. Like it's as there's nothing worse than that. It's unprofessional. You don't really know the topic. Indicates or suggests you don't really know what to say.
Yeah.
It's anyways, but yeah, Ken Ham. Our infant was really fussy today, so we didn't. I wasn't able to focus as good on Ken Ham, but it was all about the sovereignty of God in creation,
Hmm.
particularly Genesis 1 through 11. That's what
Yep.
his ministry is based off of. And the big takeaway from his is all the answers to the cultural issues. And there will you might have said that he didn't have a complete um thought out view of this. I think he did, but he says his idea had all the answers to the cultural issues, and he listed gender issues, right? Transgenderism,
Hmm.
stuff like that, racism, marriage issues, sin in general.
Hmm.
To deal with each of those, the answers all start in Genesis 1 through 11.
Hmm.
He didn't enter into a big gospel presentation, so to speak, bouncing from Genesis chapter 3 to the gospel in the New Testament. He didn't focus so much on that, even though you could obviously tell that formed a foundation of everything he was coming from. But he focused on the answers to all these cultural issues start in Genesis chapter 1 through 11. And
Yeah.
so he walked quickly through 1, 2, 3, 4 of Genesis all the way to 11, demonstrating the verses that tie into racism, marriage, gender issues, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see.
Lawson, he finished it up, right?
Lawson finished it up. In between Lawson and Ken Ham was Mike Riccardi.
That's
But
right.
before I get to Mike Riccardi, and I liked his. I really did. I did not know anything about Mike Riccardi coming to the conference. Um, Definitely a smart guy. I did enjoy. He definitely studied his material before he came out and did a sermon. Sometimes you can tell that someone hasn't really paid a lot of attention or focused a lot on what they're about to talk about. And no, this guy really studied. But there is a well, I tell you what, I might go through Lawson and Riccardi, and then I maybe say some thoughts about some of the dangers I noticed about conferences in general. But I'll save that for after I go through these two. Is that all right?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then we also after that we got some books that I'll show you, and then we'll close it out. So we got Mike Riccardi spoke on chapter 17, and if you're a 5 point Calvinist and you believe in limited atonement, right? That's what it is. But he never, I think one time he referenced it as being limited atonement, just once. He preferred to use the phrase particular atonement, and I think specific atonement, he used that a few times.
Does the definition change?
he didn't define it. Like he didn't at the beginning before he read anything say this is what it means,
Yeah.
right?
So
He
he.
just said we're going to talk about what I like to call particular atonement,
Mhm.
and then he walked through John 17. So he didn't say he tried to let I guess he tried to let John 17 define what he meant.
Mhm.
So he started with verse 1, walked all the way down, and he made 3 points after walking through. Of course, John 17 is where Jesus is praying, uh, thank you, of all the Father has given me, right? I've lost none except the one meant for perdition, right, Judas? Um, is that what it says, perdition? That don't sound right to me. The I'm trying to remember exactly what it calls them, but
That's that.
all is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. Okay. For some reason, perdition sounded wrong in my head, but I think that is what it says. I've lost none except Judas. He went through it with 3 points. Uh, there's the unity of the triune God. The Father gives to the Son, right? All those that the Son dies for. That was the circle that he built. So he describes the unity. He brought in Romans 9. That was verses 1 through 5 and 6. The second point he did was, where are you? The faithfulness of our high priest. Um, he jumped back to Leviticus 16 to describe the priestly functions, and then brought in that Jesus, a priestly function was sacrificing and making intercession. Those were two functions. And he demonstrated that Jesus also fulfills those two priestly functions. He's the sacrifice. He doesn't just make the sacrifice, he is the sacrifice. But he also makes intercession. And he asked a question. Um he or is does Christ no, I'm sorry. He asked a question, but before that, he believes that John 17 and Leviticus 16 would teach that Christ intercedes for whom he dies, and he dies for whom he intercedes. That he would say that's a twofold ministry of Christ's priestly function. And so he asked, is Christ asking for everybody who's ever lived? Does Christ ask for that to his Father? And does the Father say, no, I'm only going to give you some? He asked that question, and he answers obviously, but I'll leave it open ended. Is does Christ ask for everybody in the world to his Father, and does the Father say no? And it's an interesting walkthrough of John 17 in that way. And if you want to jump in there, that's fine. There's one more point, but if you feel like you want to say something there,
Nah, go ahead.
okay. I'm sure you've got a lot to say about it, but the third point is power of Christ's blood. And I heard a quote a long time ago, and it popped in my head again today that, um, if Christ is such that if he spilled one drop of blood, he could have bought the whole human race with that one drop of blood.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard that quote before?
Yeah, in fact,
I
I
don't.
didn't quote it, but I was talking to a guy today and made. I said, if all the bleeding Jesus did was a nosebleed, it'd be enough to atone the world.
Yeah, because of his power of who he
I
is,
mean, and
right?
I've never heard that quote, but I mean, that's what I just said is literally what I was talking to a fellow about
Yeah,
today.
I don't know who did the quote. I have no idea, but I've heard it before, and it makes you think back in Isaiah where we read, right, God formed everything. He weighs out the waters in the palm of his hand. He uses the span, right, of his hand to measure stuff. You take everything, all the dust, everything in the world, all the holy men, all the books of the world, everything good, great, and glorious, and Christ outweighs them all,
Mm-hmm.
right? Christ outweighs them all. If he wanted to, one drop of blood would have paid for everyone in all the time, all the creation. Um, but he obviously people die and go to hell, right? We're not universalists. We believe the Bible teaches a hell that people will suffer in. And so he walked through. He focused on verse 4 of John 17, and I'll actually. Spoiler alert! If you pre-registered, you received a free LSB, Legacy Standard Bible. Really cool. It's hardcover. It's not a reference Bible. There will be no verse references pointing throughout the Old and New Testament. It's just a straight four-column reading of the Word of God. Um, this is John MacArthur's Bible that Master Seminary came out with. I guess it's Master Seminary. It's
Well, it's Master's work with
sure.
not Zondervan. Oh, what is the name of that group? I can't remember.
Is it just a grace to you? I guess that's John MacArthur's ministry is grace to you.
No, 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 no. Nothing with that. Let's see.
But I turned to it. So John 17 verse 4, I glorified you on the earth, having finished the work which you have given me to do. Now, Father, glorify me together with yourself, with the glory which I had with you before the world was. The wind is blowing.
Lockman Foundation.
Lockman Foundation.
Lockman Foundation.
Okay. So, he didn't go much further than verses 4, 5, 6, and 7, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
But he discussed the power of Christ's blood, that Christ doesn't just accomplish. Christ doesn't just provide a way of salvation, but he accomplishes the salvation.
Mm-hmm.
At the cross, he says, "It is finished," right? Tetelestai, paid in full. Let's see. And I won't spend too much time on him, but I'll be honest. And I didn't agree with everything wholesale that he went through. There's one argument in particular. I won't go into it now, but there's one argument in particular he used that I'm not a big fan of. But even if you are not a full-fledged 5-point Calvinist, a 4, 3, 2, or 1 point or none, I think if you really sat and just listened to it, it was a great study of John 17. Even if you're not a limited atonement guy or definite atonement, or as he called it, particular atonement, I think you would still enjoy that sermon. I really do. Anything you want to say about that, or you want me to go to Steve Lawson?
No, go ahead.
Awesome. So Steve Lawson, he went to Isaiah 40. James White, he was in Isaiah 42 or 41, I believe. Steve Lawson went a few chapters back to Isaiah 40, and this was probably, if you wanted to see someone demonstrate on exegesis and only exegesis, and I mean verse by verse, word by word exegesis, this was it. This was by far the most exegetical sermon of the whole conference. This was Isaiah 40 through the end.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and I mean, he did not leave a verse out. It was, but he didn't. It weren't slow. He went through it quickly. He didn't
No, Lawson
spend.
knows what he's doing.
Lawson's efficient. Lawson's efficient. He went all the way to the end of the chapter, starting in verse 12, and this is the one where we discuss. He holds things in the palm of his hand. He measures things by his span. One of the things, images he drew out was in verse 15 and 17. It talks about the nations form just a drop in the bucket of everything compared to God. All the nations world are just a drop in the bucket compared to all of creation, everything God is and creates. And he says that, that little bead of, condensation when it forms on something, right? Like a water bottle or whatever, a little bead of condensation is all that the nations are compared to God.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that image. And he went to verses 18 through 20, where it discusses people form an idol They the ones that can afford it, they dress it up real nice in gold chains and such, and the ones who can't afford it, they make sure the stump is took and cut exactly right so that the idol won't topple over. A false idol is such that it can't even keep itself upright. And I just that was just I loved it. But yeah, that this was an excellent. If you just want to see pure exegesis, this was it. This was a great exegesis of Isaiah 40. Anything to say about that?
No, Lawson's amazing.
I know. He wasn't. This was the first time I've seen. Well, all of these guys, it was the first time I've seen them live. He was the only one that spoke twice. He closed it out.
Hmm.
He closed it out with a gospel message. Once he finished his exegesis, he turned to the gospel. I I liked that he didn't assume that everybody there was saved. Right? He said if you're out there and you haven't repented and you're not saved, and then he repent of your sins, have faith in Christ and his redeeming work on the cross, and you shall be saved. And just powerful gospel at the end. Um I got some free resources, but I think what he said, the gospel he shares at the end, is a good segue into something I would like to caution. That I saw some of it, and it just is a cautionary tale of some of a conference. I remember we've talked before that conferences are great. You need to go to them. You need to get filled up. You need to learn from pastors, but they can't replace your local church, right? You you can't go to a conference if you're just in the midst of sin and your home's not secure. Um, a conference may not, if you're not steadfastly going to a local church and taking your family to a local church, you've got problems that a conference is not going to help. Um, one like G3 anyway. Of course, there's counseling conferences and things of that nature. But one of the danger of G3 and the other conferences is hero worship, right? Or doctrine worship. We have these doctrines that I agree with, and these heroes of faith in our modern times that I love, but those cannot take the place of the Great Commission and our work that the Lord gives us every day. What do I mean by that? I think I'll just give an example. So, how many people just wanted to go to these booths, the vendors that are set up in the booths of the different missions? How many people just wanted to go to the booths to meet their hero or a famous preacher and didn't actually care about what the booth represented or helping or being part of a ministry, right?
Hmm.
That's hero worship. I mean, that's hero worship. There's nothing wrong with meeting your hero or meeting someone you admire, but uh, do you care about the ministry they've built and the work that it's doing and supporting or bringing it into your church to be a part of that ministry or building a ministry like it or using learning from that ministry to go out and reach the lost in your neighborhood? Chocolate Knox before right, we both know Chocolate Knox. I finally got to meet him. That was awesome. You know him a little bit better than I do. Cross politic guy. Whoops. He had a about an hour and 40-minute podcast a couple of days ago called "Show Me Your Argument." Did you watch that? So, if you claim that you believe in the sovereignty of God, that you believe in taking Christianity into the culture, in the Great Commission, in living your life for Christ, all of Christ for all of life, everything in your life to the glory of God, prove it.
Hmm.
Show me your argument. Don't just tell me what you believe. Show me your argument. Show me what you've built. Show me the family that you have raised. They go to church, that the children honor and love and respect their mom and dad, that show me your argument. Don't just tell me, prove it. Um, live out what you're learning, kill sin, mortify sin, right? Don't say that you love ministry work and you believe in the Great Commission and and at the same time you're going home at night and pulling out magazines that you shouldn't look, or in today's society clicking on links on the website you shouldn't look
Hmm.
at, right? Um, this is something that I saw, and maybe I'm a little unfair, but I think I feel good enough to say this. The ministry, they had a couple ministries there against porn, like overcoming porn or overcoming sin in
Hmm.
general. They had a couple of ministries dedicated to that. The lines for those ministries and those resources should have been longer than the lines that formed to meet the heroes. And maybe that's a little unfair of me, but that was my conviction as I went through this conference. And there's nothing wrong with meeting your hero again. I want to qualify that, but what's the use of meeting someone you admire if you're not applying what they've been teaching you? I gotta take a swig of water.
I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know. Good point.
But I mean, you understand where I'm coming
Oh
from.
yeah.
I met a lot of my heroes, but at the same time, I went around. I'm nobody. I'm not using myself as anything, but I tried to keep in my head that these guys represent a ministry. Um, this ministry is serving a purpose, is fulfilling the great commission, or is speaking out against evil
Hmm.
somewhere, or is creating resources for other Christians. I need to be on board and applying one of these three to my life and helping with it.
Hmm.
That was the thought that kept going through my mind as I went through the booths.
Well, so as far as that's all concerned, um, it was Calvin himself that made the comment that the heart's an idol factory.
Yeah,
So you see that in people, no matter what. I mean, and to it'd be nice if stuff like that didn't happen in ministry, but as long as we're sinners, you know, it's something we have to deal with. Um,
the the heart of the problem is the heart,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And so, like I said, I mean, it'd be nice, but it's well, as a race, we want to make things more important than what they are, and we don't want to make God on His platform. Like we don't want God on His platform. We want us on His platform. We want uh others. We want success. How do you get success? Well, you talk to other successful people. Um, how many wonderful pastors are there out there who nobody knows their name, right? And
Exactly.
and then you have uh phenomenal guys who uh who have made it. Made it ain't even the right word, but they've made God has put them on a larger platform. Yeah,
Yes, I about to say that's a good way to put it.
and
God in His providence has given them a
yeah,
platform where a lot of people see
yeah,
them, and praise be to God. I think James White and Jeff Durbin and people like that have used their platform for
yeah.
good. Like they have served the church. They have built wonderful ministries. Um, when I talk about hero worship, it's not their fault, right? God's given them.
Here's something.
Yeah, go
Who
ahead.
who do you go to first when wanting to know something scripturally? Your pastor or an internet pastor?
Mm. I I think first I are you asking me directly or
No,
are you
no, no.
just hypothesizing?
I'm not. no, I'm not trying to point anybody or any. It's just as when
Right.
you were saying that, that's what went through my mind is how many people would rather go online, find what Jeff Durbin, Vody, Wilson, or Josh Bice, or whoever, MacArthur, and they immediately go to their thing, right? And it's rather than go to their own pastor and say, Pastor, I was reading this. This is how I understand it. Is that right? Like, and maybe some pastors put up boundaries to where that isn't possible. I'm not one of those guys. I love talking that kind of stuff, and so if people come up to me with I mean, I last Sunday I had a lady come up to me with 1 John 5:4, where older translations said whatever, newer translations said whoever. Whatever implies that God saves by the faith, right? Um, whoever is God saving the person. So there's a slight difference. Ultimately, it isn't like it's going to one means there's not heresy involved. It's just how you read it, basically, right? And you go to the Greek, and the Greek says it can be used either way, but you do see a change within the last 20 years of how the translators have translated that word. And she brought that up to me, and I was like, I don't know, I don't know. Sunday afternoon, last like I'm calling. I'm like, hey, I checked it out. I'll give you my opinion on it, and I'll be honest, it's just my opinion, right? And just gave her what I had discovered, what I'd like to know more about, and weren't able to find. How many people would rather just go? And I don't mean like I have. See if I can point to it. That's MacArthur's commentary right there, ain't it?
I got you.
Yeah.
I got the brightness turned down so that I don't waste my battery life.
Okay.
So it's hard for me to
So
see.
that's MacArthur's commentary. I'm not saying if you got a commentary, don't go to it and read it, right? I'm not.
I'm doing the John Piper method of conserving my battery. Don't waste your.
so so I'm not saying you can't study using other people, but if don't just assume that these people have all the answers and they're right about everything, and your pastor's just some guy who you know in real life. Your pastor loves you. Your pastor's job is to shepherd you. Your pastor's job is to smell like the sheep, to keep you from running off of cliffs.
Yes.
And we're like that sheep that was on that meme that time. That you see the farmers pull the sheep out of the ditch, and he just runs a little bit further, and he right back into a ditch. And that's how we are. So in this, do you have more respect? Maybe that's a better way of saying it, because like I said, it's coming to me as you were talking. Do you have more respect for your internet guy or for your real life pastor?
And a good test of that is to recall to mind which one is going to meet you at the hospital at 3 a.m.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Right? That's worthy of respect. That alone is that alone there it gets a little bit of
Yeah.
respect.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to make it sound like these guys aren't worth buying a commentary, or they're not worth watching sermons. But there has to, and I'm not saying that you ought to hero worship your pastor, right? What I am saying is that going to conferences and all this stuff, there's guys who go, man, you've impacted my life, my ministry, and all this stuff, and they live and they just heave this high praise onto this guy, and then they go back to their church and they go, our pastor, I wish he was more.
Yeah,
I wish he
that's
was.
definitely a
I wish
risk.
he was more like someone else. I wish he was more like this guy or that guy. I wish my pastor, it's just not understanding that God hasn't given you Vody Bacham to be your pastor. He gave you John McJohnson, you know, and Reverend John McJohnson's an awesome guy who
Right.
wants to lead you well. And so you're not going to agree in every aspect with your pastor. You're not. And me and you had a conversation. I don't think on the podcast. I think this was behind the scenes, but where the statement was made that pray for that dude. Pray for that dude,
Yes.
and he loves you, and he's not trying to mislead you. And if you think he's wrong, pray to God to say, if he's wrong, adjust his way of thinking. If I'm wrong, adjust my way of thinking. Right? Don't.
Yeah. Yes and amen.
And so, uh, yeah, yeah. So I'll give it back to you now.
No, I really appreciate that because I think that helps round out what I was trying to say in my own way. Um, I don't really know what else to go to. I got some free resources that I could pull out and go through, and some that I bought. They got a giant bookstore. What are you gonna do, right?
So that's something I haven't heard you talk about. How did you like the bookstore?
Oh man, the book. So I guess the reason I didn't talk a lot about it is I didn't spend hours
Yeah.
there. I browsed, right? I found two books that I purchased from there, and I got the free resources.
Mhm.
I think I didn't mention it because honestly didn't have any issues in the bookstore. It was set out really well, plenty of space. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
people there. It's 8,000 people. It's going to get crowded, but everything was planned out. Real, I gotta say, the bookstore probably the best planned out
And
part of the whole
as many
conference. It was.
people
It
who
was.
go through that bookstore, you have a stack of books in your hands that you're buying. You're not sitting there in line for an hour trying to buy books. You There may be a couple people in front of you, and they are moving people through that line. I mean, it is
Yeah. Well,
remarkably
yeah. I'll
efficient.
mention that too. I mentioned that too. There's probably three really efficient things that helped push this into a good experience. They had they didn't have two people checking out.
It wasn't Walmart.
Like no, it was they had probably 14 or
It was
13.
Chick-fil-A.
Um, yes, they had 14 or 13 people at the checkout
Yeah.
area checking checking your books out where you pay them and you get a bag with your books in it. They had 13 or 14 people there. That was super efficient. They had a place where you could have books shipped. Right? They assumed that there's people flying out and
Hmm.
stuff, and maybe they don't want to pay a hard fee to take their books on the airplane in a carry-on bag or whatever. So they had a place where you could ship your books, have your books shipped to your house. Um, and what was the yeah, just the general
Hmm.
layout was efficient. You weren't bumping into people. There was plenty of books, and they were discounted.
Yes.
Right there's some really good discounts. Um,
Especially the last day.
especially the last. So, a funny thing is, on the last day, there wasn't that many discounts in the bookstore that I saw. I may have missed
Yeah.
them, but there was a lot of discounts at the vendors and the
Yeah.
booths. 40% off, 50% off of different books and
Okay.
such. Um, a couple of free resources: the Legacy Standard Bible, book on abortion by R.C. Sproul,
Okay.
Abortion: A Rational Look at an Emotional Issue. I haven't even opened it yet, but it was a free resource.
Let me ask you this, because
Um,
you
Go
like
ahead.
RC. I shouldn't say like RC more, but you're more familiar with his body of work. That's probably a better way to say that. And you probably do
Yeah.
like him more, but um, uh, abolitionist, incrementalist.
I'm not even sure if the words had really become well defined at
Hmm.
that point, right? So I would say that's probably that I don't know right
Okay.
off the bat. My my mind would probably say
Yeah,
incrementalist.
because he wasn't a
That's just
presuppositionalist either.
no classical apologetics. He is now, right? But oops, I let the cat out of the bag. Let's move on before
All right.
yeah. So we have Law and Gospel. I've never heard of this one, but and I'm not going to pronounce his last name correctly, but it's by John Coquahon, a minister in the Church of
Uh
Scotland.
huh.
The book is about the relationship between the law and the gospel. Um, and anything that talks about that, I have an interest in that. That's one of the things that when I read the Bible, I'm always got in the back of my head. The goodness of the law, Psalms 119, and then the gospel because the law's a tutor, Galatians,
Hmm.
right? So I'm always that's always running in my
Yeah.
head.
Let me
Um,
ask you this, this is
Go
where I'm
ahead.
going to interrupt a little bit more because this is books.
Yeah, dude.
I didn't want to interrupt so much during the what you had seen and everything, but um, with the you talking about the law and gospel and how that's. Do you think the upbringing in the Free Will Baptist Church affected that for you?
Ooh, it's a nice day today.
Okay, I'll hush. I'll hush. My bust.
No, no. It's hard for me to answer questions like
Yeah,
that because, like I've told you before, growing up in the Free Will Baptist Church, um, I always took away from most sermons. This is how you keep from losing your
yeah.
salvation, or as some people prefer to put it, how to keep from walking away
Well,
from the
and
faith.
that's what I was sitting there thinking. The law in a Free Will Baptist or free will in general, Armenian minded people, the law is something that is, um, if not obeyed, the grace goes away.
They would interpret Hebrews 6 as saying you can fall away from
Yeah,
grace.
where,
So I would say to put it in that language, um, I would say free will Baptists are not antinomianism,
mhm,
right? That it's not. I don't want to say legalistic,
yeah,
right? Even though a lot of free will Baptist churches they have in their constitution that they forbid drinking,
hmm,
right? Alcohol, that kind of thing. I hesitate to call them legalistic, but that would be the error that they would err on if they erred one way or
yeah,
the other.
yeah.
Um, but no, I don't think I'm not really sure the answer to that question. To be honest, that's the best way I can
That's
answer
fine.
it.
That's fine. It's,
Yeah, no, I would love to do a podcast one day on how we started really growing in the
yeah.
faith,
Yeah,
right?
because we have a
That
different
would be
story in that sense because you were on one
yes,
end and pendulum swung to the other end in that way.
as a way to the other
Yeah,
end.
and where I have pretty much sat where I do, um, uh, as long as I've been able to have an understanding. And so there are things that have evolved to understand better, that kind of thing. I don't want to make it sound like I'm just like, well, this is the way it is and I ain't changing. But um, um, it is just a difference in our stories. It's a different background.
The way I see an episode like that going is we would give a little bit of our testimony, but that would only be one part. The rest would be what launched us into studying theology or really living out the Christian
Hmm.
faith,
Yeah.
right? Not just conversion, but
Hmm.
sanctification. Really start diving into the scriptures. That'd be an excellent episode, but not
Not
today because we got some books to
not
go through.
today, son.
Not
All
today.
right. He's
All
got a
right.
pair of boxers.
I
No,
bought me
t-shirt.
bought me a shirt from uh Alpha. That would have been funny. I'd be like, "Is that my boxers?" Oh, okay. Alpha and Omega, 40 years in ministry. On the back is every single well, let me see what the last day is. Yes, so from 2022 all the way back to 1990, every single public debate he's ever been in is on the back of this shirt. The location, the subject, um, and who it
Yeah.
was. So great. I bought it just to have a reference. I'll wear it, obviously, but I bought it to have a cool reference for. I wonder if James White's ever debated, yeah, a Free Will Baptist,
That's
right?
you.
And I can refer to it.
That is. Oh, that just summed up your personality. That statement of "I'll wear it, but I've got it for a reference."
Oh man, I'm gonna talk to you about business opportunity when we get done because I think you and Becky would be all in for my idea I had. We're gonna compete with some of these merchandisers next
Ah,
year. So let's see what else. And I'm not going through any particular order. I'm literally pulling out of a bag. So I decided to become Presbyterian and joined the Reformed Presbyterian University Theological Seminary. No, I the Reformed Theological Seminary was there, and they if you signed on to have more information sent to your
mm-hmm.
email, they gave you a choice of a free book. They had a what mean you've kind of been talking a lot lately about identifying a good church
Yeah.
or don't neglect the local church, and they had a book called Hitting the Marks: Restoring the Essential Identity of the Church by Barry J. York. Um, he is one of the people there on a podcast that seminary
Mm-hmm.
does, and I just thought, yeah, I'll grab it. It looks
Why
interesting.
not?
Yeah. So we have that one. Have okay. I was really glad this was a free resource. I'm not gonna say his name right. Nate Pickowicz.
Mm-hmm.
Pickowicz. He is a teaching pastor in Gilmanton Ironworks, New Hampshire. I have read a book from him on the
Mm-hmm.
Puritans. It was a short. It was a cool layout. It was a book of about 6 or 7 Puritans, and had um maybe 20 pages apiece devoted to a biography of them, how they grew up, how they came to America. It was that era, right? The Governor William Bradford and the people that came after him, Cotton Mather, John Owen, John, all those guys,
Mm-hmm.
right? John Cotton, right? It went through those guys, and I really enjoyed that book, so I was glad they had a free resource by him. This one's called Christ and Creed: The Early Church Creeds and Their Value for Today. And I believe this is a fairly recent book as well. So that it's not a long
Yeah.
book, which is it's a very short book. That may be why it was a free resource. But if I'm gonna look at the copyright real quick because I believe, yeah, published in
Yeah.
2023. Copyright 2023. Yeah, so very recent book. That's probably going to be one of the first ones I start on.
It's like taking
Um,
care of debt. Start with the small ones, then you work your way up to the big ones.
yes, sir, Dave Rims. I mean, David. So, well,
The fact
yeah,
that you
well,
got that,
hey,
we've never mentioned anything about Dave Ramsey. You nailed it like that.
I paid off my mortgage. Been there, done that. Did not get a T-shirt. But no, so well, something to be said about that. Again, just like we were talking about a while ago, I've bought these
Mm.
books, and I am going to read them.
Wow.
Right? Uh, because I've paid money for most of them except the free ones. But again, if you um this I weren't even planning to go this way.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
David. But if I hear a rich sermon, theologically rich sermon, and I love it, it pulls on my heartstrings, but I don't make any application. I go home and my next day is exactly the same physically as it was before. That is just like me buying a bunch of books and never reading them. Or as James says, a man who looks in the mirror and walks away and forgets what he looked like.
I don't appreciate that.
So,
Any man that just sit here and insult me to my face like that, knowing I'm dyslexic, knowing I can't read books, knowing it.
uh,
I made it awkward. He's like, oh, I don't know how to respond now.
I well, I thought of a very
Go
insensitive
ahead, go
joke,
ahead.
but I'm just not gonna. That sounds like a personal problem.
But I'm a millennial, so I'm gonna make it your bro. Yeah,
Uh-oh.
I'm suing.
No. I,
I'm suing. I'm going to sue everybody that doesn't make an audiobook. It should be against the law to
uh,
publish a book
oh,
without an
yeah.
audio version.
Look, yeah. Man, this got awkward. I don't know where to go from there.
Look, just for the record, I don't believe that at all. I have a girl in our church who runs I won't mention where, but she runs a tourism industry in a particular place, and she got in trouble because her website was not dyslexic friendly, and I almost had a cow, son. I'm like, make the church do like I do, marry a woman that knows how to read. It is one of those things. I am not the guy who has sympathy towards that stuff. I'm like, work hard, work harder. We all have weak spots. We
No,
work harder.
no
Yeah,
excuses.
yeah.
No excuse. Well, you have a great testimony about that we'll talk more about in the future of how technology's really enabled you to do
And that's
things.
the truth.
Uh,
That's the truth. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So,
So we're at
yeah,
51
you got to
minutes, so
get
let's
through this
fly through
book.
these. Um, Founders Ministry gave me this one for free. It's called "Brothers, We Are Not Plagiarists: A Pastoral Plea to Forsake the Peddling of God's Word." And David, I looked the guy in the eye and I asked him, "When did you write this book?" Well, no, I'm sorry. Um, David Schrock was not there. But I looked at the guy and I asked him, when did you write this book? When did he write this book? And he said, "Yeah, I know what you're thinking. It was a little bit after the issues that Southern Baptists had with the plagiarism." But he did say that it wasn't all about that. It was partly the issue with AI and
Hmm.
plagiarism as it relates to pastors. Interesting subject, so I definitely will be reading this one. I hope I didn't make it awkward for that guy when I asked him that. um, this was a free resource given by Accountable to You. Defending Purity in a Pornographic Age, a practical approach to biblical accountability. It's a free resource, but it's also advertising their Accountable to You ministry, which is a software. I believe it's software that you can install to kind of
Yeah.
protect you from looking at things you
So that's more
shouldn't.
of an advertisement.
It is, but they actually did include with it a resource, right? Warning against
Yeah.
pornography, sexual purity, that kind of thing. Again, it's one that if I don't read it, right, I'm not applying what I've learned. This one was on discount on the second day, $2, and it's normally $14. So I picked it up. I'm a big Isaiah guy. This one's called Stump Kingdom, Isaiah 6 through 12 by Dale Ralph Davis. I love the name of it, and I just really liked the image on here of a little blade of grass coming up,
Hmm.
right? Um, Isaiah 6 through 12 is talking about the stump that comes out of the stump of the root of
Yeah.
Jesse. That's a great topic, something that fascinates me to study, and it was only $2, so why not? I like the back of it. It says, "A twig shall come forth from the stump of Jesse, and a shoot from his roots will bear fruit." Isaiah 11:1. My wife bought a book. Um, I Joy almost never buys anything for
Hmm.
herself, and I really encouraged her. Susan Heck was a women's ministry instructor that was there. This was her first time at G3. She's I don't know where this is at, but people kept telling me that she has been called the John MacArthur of women ministries. I had never heard of her before, but that's pretty high praise.
I like how the your wife's book's thicker than your books.
But not thicker than my Bible. This one was a biblical study on
Hmm.
Colossians, verse by verse. Um, I'm glad she picked that up. She loves Colossians. It'll be a good resource for her to read and study,
And they keep her feet dry.
uh, and to keep her feet dry. All right, so Nick Needham is a really good writer with church history stuff. He's able to take super dry historical thick textbooks on church history. Dumb them down enough that I can understand them, but make them interesting enough to keep me
Mm-hmm.
reading it. Nick Needham, he's got a series called 2,000 Years of Christ Power. I have the first one at home, and this is volume
Okay,
two.
that's good.
It was discounted more than if I had bought it
Yeah.
online, so I went ahead and picked it up. I love church history. This one's on the Middle Ages, which people call the Dark Ages. My stack of books is like rising. um, the Middle Ages is probably the time period I know the least amount about. He would define it as being between the 7th and 15th
Mm-hmm.
century. Um, so like the 800s through um, the 1400s. That's the one I probably know the least about. So I'm excited to dive into that. We got a little book on the Christian life, and it's called A Little Book on the Christian Life. It's by it's by John Calvin. Um, or as everybody calls him, Johnny Cow. No, I'm just kidding. Um, this one was not the first choice I had. R.C. Sproul's commentary on First and Second Peter was given out for
Mm-hmm.
free, and I got in line to get it, and it got gone before I could claim it. So as a backup, they had these right here they were giving away. So I grabbed one. I'll definitely read it. I'm slowly working through John Calvin's
Mm-hmm.
Institutes on the audiobook actually. I don't have the physical copy of it, but yeah, I've not read a lot of John Calvin, to be honest with you, other than listening to the
Mm-hmm.
Institutes. So I'm excited for it because of that. And we have finally hit the last one. And I gotta say, my favorite experience, my favorite vendor or booth at the G3 conference was by far BSI. The Reformed Sage had a great conversation with him, who does the merchandise. But by far, my favorite conversation was at the Biblical Scientific Institute, which is Jason Lyle's ministry. I bought this book from them. It's a short pocket guide to logic and faith by Dr. Jason Lyle and Patricia Engler. Discerning Truth in Logical Arguments. So it's a standard book on logic, logical
Mm-hmm.
fallacies, how to avoid them, how to spot them, illustrations and examples of it. I'm really excited to go through that. Had a great conversation with the guy manning his booth. Jason Law was not there. He's writing two books right now, from what I understand, and he's working as hard as he can. So he did not take time to come, and I don't blame him. The man works hard.
He's a hard working man.
But yeah, yeah, you can kind of see my stack of
Yeah.
books. It started from the bottom. Now it's
Well,
here.
and that's just a sample of what's available out there. I mean, um, you saw my because I got R.C. Sproul's commentary on Matthew. You saw that laying on my
Yes.
desk. I read that every week. And I bought that. Well, 2 years ago. It was before I got started in I bought that and I bought RC Sproul's. I already mentioned him. Um, Charles Spurgeon's commentary on Matthew, and both of those have been incredibly helpful in my expositional working through Matthew. And so, like you said, most of the books are cheaper than if you buy them online. That's not always the case, but it is for, I want to say, most of them. I may be wrong in that. But,
I would say the bookstore. I would say yes. Now there's always going to be a website that's got a used book that's going super cheap. I can't
we're
account for
talking about
that,
if you just go on
but
Amazon and say, hey, what's the price on this book? It's probably going to be higher than what was at the bookstore.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's at the bookstore. It had this is the listed price. Here's where it's
Yeah.
marked down to. Going from that, then yeah, it's marked down. The vendors, there was one book by Vodi Bakum that was actually priced higher than it was online, but the reason for it is it hadn't been released yet. People at
Okay.
the conference had the opportunity to buy it before it was released. It was to be released in a week or two, something like that. If you wanted to get ahead of everybody and get you a copy, you could do that.
Capitalism.
We've hit 60 minutes,
We
David.
have.
Yeah, I don't really have any final thoughts on the conference.
Okay.
I'm glad I came. I enjoyed it. I
Yeah.
learned, laughed, had a good time. Me and my wife both sat and under some really good teaching, under some awesome pastors, and I'm glad I was able to do it with her and our
So
5 month old.
I'll 5 minutes and then we'll close. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this was because in 2 or 3 weeks I'm headed up to Kentucky to the Ark for the like Fast Fight Laugh Feast conference.
For the Fast and the
That's
Furious
right.
conference.
That's going to be our conference. Uh, Fast, Furious, and Alive. Um, and so I'm going there. It's a different style of conference. It is a where this is preaching back to back to back to back to back. Big bookstore. Um, you're in a very large crowd. The Fight Laugh Feast conference is you've got a lot of booths, podcast booths, vendor booths, people selling things like not just like ministry booths, but actual like we're not a ministry. We sell gadgets, and and it's much more designed for connecting to make uh, networking, right? So uh, what one of the things I'd like to do is when I go there is for our listeners to be able to compare and contrast because most people can't go to a bunch of different conferences. Most people can't go to 4 or 5 conferences a year, even if they wanted to, right?
No, no, it's expensive, and you got to take time away from your family and your job, and for the lay, especially for a lay person, right? Like me, I'm a deacon, but not someone that's not a
Mm-hmm.
pastor, that's not doing it full time. Um, it is a
Yeah,
sacrifice to come.
and it is for anybody who does it. And so it, I just kind of wanted to lay out compare and contrast. So in a couple weeks, we'll do the same thing. I'll let you know how how the conference went, who I met, that kind of stuff, and I think it'll just be a good compare and contrast. Next year, hopefully, not luck, I guess, but you know what I mean. Um, but yes, um, I do like Harry Ticks. Um, you throw me off. Uh, but the men's conference for up in New York.
Yeah, John Harris, AD Robles, and a
Yeah,
few others
yeah.
are going to be there.
So that may be something me and you get a chance to go to together. If there again, God willing, that's what we're hoping to maybe take advantage of. Not making any promises, and that's a totally different beast compared to these two conferences. So I go to a conference every year that's held at a medium-sized church, and it's one of my favorite things to ever go to. So when I go to that, we'll probably do it again, just so that you can kind of see and grasp. Um, because we would encourage you to go to a conference, but different personalities, different places in your walk with Christ are going to desire different outcomes of that. So
Yeah, and are we going to try to squeeze in a podcast episode while you're down there?
yes, yeah. We'll probably do it very similar to what you've got here, what we've done here. So, excuse me, that didn't want to wait until the end of the podcast. All right then. Well, brother, if you ain't got nothing else to say, I'm gonna shut up and
No, I'm good.
we'll jump off of here and we'll see y'all next time.
Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, check us out on Facebook, Spotify, Instagram, YouTube, Rumble now, right?
Yeah.
Rumble, ManAlive in Christ. Yeah, thanks for watching.